Hey everybody, how's it going? Steve here to welcome you to another Game Explained discussion. I'm joined by my boss, André Seegers. How are you, André?
I'm not doing bad, Steve. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. So today we're here to talk about Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and it's safe to say that we're going a little impromptu this time. Plans have changed. You just got finished streaming the demo at the time of this recording, right, André?
Yeah, we're recording this the day before the embargo, which is the same day we had the Nintendo Treehouse Live event showing off basically 45 minutes of this game, in addition to the demo that came out just a few hours later. So what I'm getting at is, there's not a whole lot I can say about this game that you can't discover for yourself at this point.
That being said, we traditionally run like a 10 or 15 things you didn't know, and we were planning that for this, but like I said, plans have changed and we're going a little impromptu with it. André, do you want to break down what you had on your list for us?
Yeah, so first off, obviously there's some big new additions to this game, such as co-op, there's a new hint mode, there's the achievement-like badge system, there's brand new controls, because there's no gamepad anymore, and there's also the side stories, which add a new prologue and epilogue. So most of those were known, and I'll touch on all of those as we go through this. However, there are 10 smaller things I have noticed from my playtime with the game over the past week or so that I did want to touch on that you can go find out for yourself in the demo right now, but you might not have noticed or you may not be playing the demo, so let's cover them right here real quick. Number 1. There are now 3 save slots in the game. That's right, on the original Wii U version, you had only a single save slot per profile, but now you get 3, which is pretty handy.
This is a lifesaver.
Yes!
Because I played Pikmin 3 on the Wii U, and my partner at the time decided to pick up my save and finish it. So I've never beat Pikmin 3 because I didn't have the heart to go back and start over.
Well, hey, here's your chance, and you get 3 opportunities to avoid that, hopefully, this time.
Let's hope somebody doesn't pick up all 3 of my saves and finish them.
Yeah, that'd be bad. All right, number 2. There is now a difficulty select. There was only 1 difficulty in the original game, as I recall, and now there are 3, although only 2 are unlocked by default, being normal and hard. And if you manage to play hard all the way through, you unlock the 3rd one being ultra spicy. However, while you can change difficulties at any point from the main menu, if you do so, you will lose the ability to unlock ultra spicy until you play through the whole game without changing it on hard mode. So yeah, that's kind of nice if you're coming back to Pikmin 3, if you want a little bit more of a challenging experience. Speaking of which, my 3rd one is that the game seems to have been rebalanced in a few ways, or at least in one way. I'm sure there might be other tweaks I haven't noticed, but the main thing I have noticed is that you're now going to find more nectar throughout the experience, which kind of powers up your Pikmin. You can notice this even in the demo right away, where you'll find like multiple eggs in areas you didn't before, where you now have more opportunities to make your Pikmin stronger than they were. Next up, moving on, number 4. One of the big changes in the game, of course, are the controls, because again, there is no gamepad, and as a consequence of that, they had to move the map to the TV. So how that works now is instead of looking down at a second screen, of course, you now have to tap a button to bring up the map, being the minus button in this case. And that brings up the whole cop pad thing, I think, or whatever it's called, being like the in-game iPad, where you can access the map and various functions. So it kind of works now how it used to work on the original Pikmin games on the GameCube, where you now can bring up the map and actually access all the same functions, including the ability to tell your teammates, your other 2 teammates, where to go, on the map, and they'll follow that route. Now, as a side effect to this, because the map is now on the same screen as your gameplay, you toggle between the 2, which I much prefer, by the way. The downside is you do lose the cool top-down 3D perspective they had in the original game, where when you were using the map on the gamepad, it would shift the camera angle on the screen to be that top-down I just mentioned. So, it's not a huge loss, but just figured I'd mention it. Number 5. Lock-on works differently this time. So there's always been a lock-on in this game, which I actually totally forgot about because I think I barely used it before. But it works differently now in that rather than the camera zooming in and changing perspective on what you're locking onto, nothing really changes at all perspective-wise. Instead, all of them are just targets a thing you're locking onto and just starts chucking the Pikmin at it, when you throw them. And I prefer this. I think it's actually a little bit more elegant and makes it more accessible. The downside is there's now a kind of obnoxious lock-on icon that's displayed at pretty much any time you can lock onto something, and it's a super minor thing. This is really a total me issue, but I just find the icon a little bit distracting. But yeah, there you go. And also you can easily cycle between targets by tapping the lock on button multiple times, which I think is a little bit more elegant than, again, it worked before. Number 6, charge has been changed to being accessed via a single button. So the way it worked before was you actually had to lock on first before you could use a charge function by shaking the nunchuck. But now you just tap, I think it's Y, and you'll send all the Pikmin out at once to attack the thing right in front of you. So it just makes it, again, a little bit easier to access, and because of that, I'm finding myself using it far more often than before, which, again, is a nice improvement. Number 7, the way that you change captains has altered a little bit. So on the previous game, you would tap, I think it was minus on the Wii remote, to cycle between your 3 captains instantly, whereas now you hold, oh, this one might be Y actually, I forget, I think it's Y, where if you hold Y, it now brings up an on-screen like menu or like quick toggle where you press a direction to change to the captain in that direction. So there's 3 captains, you can choose any of them to change to their perspective, or you can tap down to separate all your Pikmin out into their own colored groups. So it's kind of like a whatever change. It works fine. I think I might prefer the faster switching of the original, but it is technically a little bit easier if you have all 3 captains out at once and you know exactly which one you want to switch to at that point. Number 8. You can now throw Pikmin from anywhere. So let me explain this. I didn't realize how big of a change this was until I went back to the Wii U version to remind myself how that game worked. And this is kind of massive. So on the Wii U version, the Pikmin could lag behind you. So if you got too far ahead of them, you wouldn't be able to throw them if they were too far behind. That was super annoying. You couldn't even throw your captains either. But now, no matter where they are, you can throw them regardless. And in fact, it seems like they keep up no matter what. So it seems like they now not only keep up with you, but you can throw them from wherever they are. And you actually see the Pikmin kind of like teleport from where they are to your hands so you can chuck them. And that's it's so much nicer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's huge. I remember plenty of times where I had enough Pikmin, but I just couldn't throw them. I'd have to like gather them up.
Right, they would lag behind constantly, except for maybe the fully powered up ones. So yeah, this is a much nicer change. I greatly appreciate it, and it's one of those changes that again you don't recognize until you go back to how it was before. And I'm like, wow, that is a massive improvement. And to that point, number 9, the whistle size is way bigger this time. It seems like it's maybe 2 to 3 times bigger, and it is like you can fill the entire screen with just your whistle, and that is awesome. So you can call Pikmin back or even easier than you could before, and it was already a fairly generous size in the past game or in the Wii U version. But yeah, that's something that I much prefer now, and it's harder to go back to how it was before. Finally, kind of to that point number 10, they added, as far as I can tell, a brand new feature where you can talk to your ship, the SS Drake, and at any point when you're in front of it, and you can summon all the Pikmin back in the map back to the main area. So they do have to physically walk back. So it's not like an instant, call everyone back button, in that you can't just do it like seconds before the day ends and win. But if you plan enough in advance, you can just summon all your Pikmin back to the central area, and you don't have to go back and manually collect them by running through the entire map. And again, this is something that is a big change. It does, I guess, lower the risk a little bit of like losing track of your Pikmin, but I don't know if that's necessarily a negative. So this does seem to be, again, another quality of life change that is absolutely for the better. Woo! So that's my 10 reasons, my 10 changes I know, Steve, that are kind of on the smaller side of things, but might have some bigger ramifications as you go through the game.
Yeah, I was going to say particularly number 10. I really like the idea that I no longer have to go hunting around for Pikmin. I was the type of player that would always feel guilty if even one got left behind at the end of the day. And I would literally just go running around the map until the last possible second looking for 1 or 2 lost Pikmin. And just knowing that I can go back to the ship and be like, all right, everybody out of the pool. That's kind of nice.
That's exactly it.
So yeah, that is actually like a big one. That and the throwing are huge game changers. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. It's nice to see that Nintendo is not just, releasing the game and being like, hey, it's off Wii U now, good enough. They're actually making some meaningful updates. One thing we haven't touched on yet, though, Andre, is how do these updates make you feel? Like, how do you feel overall about Pikmin 3 Deluxe so far?
So I'm going to need some more time for sure, and that's what the review will be for. But at this point, I will say, I think on the whole, I do have some issues with some of the things that they've done here. I do think on the whole, I think this so far is seeming to be a better experience. Like those small quality of life issues do add up, and it just makes the game a little bit more playable, a little bit more enjoyable even. And I'm finding myself having a more like a better time now than I did before. And I think the biggest reason for that is I don't have to awkwardly straddle a gamepad in my lap in order to use a map, which is essential to this game. You need that map, especially once you start micromanaging all three of your captains. So the fact that they put that onto a map on the same screen now, like they did with the first two Pikmin games, is just so much nicer to me. So you add the new map, you add onto the new quality of life changes, some of the little gameplay tweaks, and the new additions are adding to the game, like 2-player mode, which I haven't had a chance to fully check on myself yet, unfortunately, but the new side stories, which we'll have more to touch on in a moment as well. This just seems to be a better version of Pikmin 3, which is awesome.
That does sound awesome. I've been wrapped up on another project that we'll talk more about soon, but. So I haven't had a chance to check out the demo. I haven't seen a whole lot of Pikmin 3. Is co-op couch only, or is it online as well?
So that's the biggest downside. Co-op is strictly couch only. It's split screen, one switch, which is awesome if you have a friend nearby, but in these quarantine times, it kind of sucks. And that applies to every multiplayer mode in the game. They're all split screen, they're all local. That's it. No online, no even multiple Switch versions of this. That's it. So It's cool that's there. I mean, there was no co-op in the original game, in the main story at least. But again, it sucks as limited or locked to being on the same Switch.
Yeah, and like you said, in 2020, when we can't really, or we're being advised not to, keep company, it kind of means that a lot of people won't play this mode.
Right. Yeah.
I won't. So.
Yeah, and it would have been so fun if we could. It would have been amazing if you could hop on and we could play through Pikmin 3 together, but alas.
Yeah, I mean, the streaming potential for Pikmin 3 multiplayer.
Right? Oh,
that would be
so
really
great.
Fun.
Yeah. Us just yelling at each other constantly. Steve, pick up the slack.
I'll be too busy hurting things with my rock Pikmin. But let's talk a little bit about. So I was a gamepad player. I didn't mind the gamepad for Pikmin. I actually liked the old map and stuff like that. But it has me thinking about one thing. Pikmin, my ideal mode of play was on the gamepad. How does this handle in portable mode? Like, is it noticeably worse, or does it perform just as well? Have you noticed any differences in portable versus docked?
I haven't noticed any differences to the extent that it seems to be the exact same game, in that the controls are identical. There are no touchscreen controls that I've found, which is interesting because they actually added that to the Wii U version. They added the stylus controls, and there is no version of that here. So yeah, as far as I've noticed, it seems to work just fine in handheld mode, although I do prefer playing on the TV, especially when you add into the fact that gyro controls do improve the experience, and those are a little bit more awkward when you're playing, with a system you're holding. It works, Sure. It's just not as convenient, and it's actually very similar to how the pointer works in Mario Galaxy, if you play that in handheld mode, or any mode, in 3D All-Stars, I should say.
It's interesting that you bring up 3D All-Stars, too, because didn't they add touch controls to 3D All-Stars for the pointer?
They did! So it's a little ironic that those aren't here, but...
Good old Nintendo.
Yep, that's Nintendo for you.
Let's talk a little bit about the new stuff. You said you have some info on the side stories. What can you tell me about the side stories that are new in Pikmin 3?
Yeah, so the side stories are a bit of a disappointment in that when I first heard about them, I'm like, oh, we're going to get this whole, shorter campaign with Olimar and Louie, and it's going to be amazing. But no, that's not what this is at all. Now, for clarification's sake, I can only discuss the prologue portion right now, so I'm not quite sure what the epilogue, if the epilogue is any different. But for the prologue, the way it works is there are 4 missions, one of which I can't discuss yet. I'm not sure why, because I guess I shouldn't say anything. But anyways, the way these work is you just get this little cutscene introduction, which is the exact same secret logs you would find in the Wii U version. So that's kind of like a fun way that they bring them back here, in that they act as the intro to these missions. But the problem is the mission itself is nothing special. The missions are just a version of the challenge mode, except now they take place in the same levels you explore in the campaign. So the goal is just that you're just looking for treasure within a time limit, and that's it. There's really no Pikmin growing here. There's a set amount of Pikmin on the map. You can grow a few new ones by finding pellets around the level, but they don't carry between missions at all. Each one each one exists basically in a vacuum. So when you move on to even though they label these days, it's still day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. It's really just for thematic's sake. The gameplay in one doesn't affect the other. So yeah, these are kind of uneventful and a little bit lame in that they don't really add anything new that we didn't know before. The only new things we get are, again, the gameplay portion, and the fact that there's like a little bit of a text wrap-up at the end, like the daily log. You do get that as a wrap-up, but that's it. There's really nothing major new here. So it's cool that there's new content here, and it's a cute way of incorporating the Wii U logs that we didn't really know what they meant before into like a somewhat of a gameplay manner, but there's nothing too special here either.
Oh man, that's really unfortunate. This is probably the one thing I was looking forward to the most.
Same here, yeah. Brand new like story content, like, right?
Yeah, like 3D World has this, upcoming Bowser's Fury, and I truly hope that it's more substantial than what you're describing for Pikmin 3 Deluxe.
Yeah, tell me about it. Like, again, I like that there's extra stuff here, but I think they kind of oversold it by not better describing what they were initially. They did kind of give a better idea of how they work in Treehouse today, or yesterday at this point. But even then, like, playing through them myself, I'm like, yeah, these, at least for the prologue again, they're kind of lame. But I still enjoyed the fact that there was some new gameplay, especially that makes, more or continued use of the maps in the campaign. Although, interestingly, I should note that because of the time limit, they actually scaled these maps down a bit in that they block off certain areas that for you to go to. So they kind of like make the maps a little bit smaller to facilitate the kind of gameplay they're going for, which is that you're exploring these smaller areas, trying to find all the treasure within them, and trying to better your time and your score, or rather, better your score within them, so you can max it out and get like the top level medal, which is a platinum, I think.
Oh, okay. I mean, it doesn't sound like something that'll interest me, but I'm sure there are players out there who will eat up this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think you or I are those folks.
Probably not.
So is there anything else that kind of stands out to you about your experience so far with Pikmin 3 Deluxe?
I guess the only other thing I want to touch on are the controls and how those work this time, because as I've already touched on, you had the map before on the gamepad, and you would use a touchscreen to tell your squad or your other teammates where to go, and I've already kind of broken that down. But what else the Wii U version did fantastically that I loved was the Wii Remote pointer. It just offers such an elegant way of controlling the Pikmin and selecting them with a whistle or tossing them precisely where you want them. And that's something they've tried to replicate on the Switch with the gyro controls, with regardless of whether you're using a Pro Controller or the Joy-Con. The Joy-Con does work quite a bit better, as I said it does on the in Mario 3D All-Stars with Mario Galaxy, just because it more feels like a pointer, like you're actually pointing it at the screen, whereas the Pro Controller is a little bit more awkward to use as a pointer. It still works fine. But in this case, I did find the Joy-Con to be much more elegant, and it got closest to matching the Wii Remote controls before, and I thought it felt overall pretty darn good. The downside is you do still have to recalibrate it pretty regularly, or pretty often, just as you did in Mario Galaxy on 3D All-Stars, or in 3D All-Stars. So yeah, it's not quite as elegant as it was before, and the other downside is because the recalibrate button is assigned to R, that means you lose the ability to quickly cycle back through your Pikmin type. So you still can cycle through them with L, but if you cycle past one you want, you have to go all the way around rather than tapping R to go back, if that makes sense. Yeah, so it's a slight downside, not a huge deal, but it does get a little bit more cumbersome once you have like all the Pikmin types with you and all your captains with you. You have to go through the whole reel of them to get back to the one you want, so yeah.
No. So to clarify, because I haven't played Galaxy in 3D All-Stars yet, and I haven't played Pikmin 3. How are we holding this right Joy-Con? Is it upside down with the IR camera pointing out, or is it normal?
Oh no, you hold it normal like you would in any other game. The only difference is it's using the gyro as the pointer. So that's why you have to recalibrate, because it's not referencing, there's no point of reference for it. That's why you have to reset it every minute or two. So otherwise it's going to drift from your position, and it won't feel like it's a pointer anymore. It'd still work, it would just feel awkward. So yeah, that's the downside. So again, the controls work pretty darn well. I would say it works, like for me, I'd say the Joy-Con gets 90% of the way there, which is good enough. But it's not quite as good as the Wii Remote pointer was.
nothing is.
Exactly. Nothing can be, which is why I fear, or not fear, but which is why Mario Galaxy 2, if it ever comes to the Switch, may not be quite as good as it was on the Wii, because I loved how the pointer worked in that game, so.
Yeah, I'm curious. I wonder if we'll ever get to the point where Nintendo re-releases the Wii Remote. I hope so.
I doubt it. I don't think, they did force themselves so far from the Wii branding, I don't think we'll ever see it come back. For better or worse.
That's both probably a blessing and a curse. Well, with that, do we have anything else that we want to talk about on Pikmin 3 Deluxe?
One only other final thing, and that is I just want to touch on the graphics real quick, which is that they still, by and large, look identical to before, which is to say, it still looks pretty good. There are parts that do look that come up a little bit short, like if you go into camera mode, you can tell like the Pikmin are a little bit like, low poly or low text. The textures aren't great. The ground textures, have always been a shortcoming in the series. That continues to be the case. But by and large, this is still a great looking game. But I will say the frame rate is actually more solid than it was before. You would see occasional slowdown before, including in the opening cinematic to the levels where you're flying in, or on the juice screen when you're like juicing the fruits you find. Both now seem to run super smooth. So I am happy to say that the game does seem to run even better than it did before.
So there's one question that, as a Pikmin 3 player, I can't believe we haven't even touched on yet. Does the fruit still look edible?
Oh, it looks at least as edible as it did before, which is the best part of this game. Like, I want to drink all that juice they get in the game.
Yeah, I remember playing that and being like, how did they make food look so good?
Right?
This was years before Final Fantasy 15 was doing crazy stuff with food for no apparent reason.
Yeah, this is like just not too long after like Ratatouille, I think, too, which was which they also put a huge emphasis on food in that case, in the movie's case. And I wonder if they were inspired a little bit by that. Like, we gotta make food as good looking as they did in the movie starring a rat.
I know, right? I have to wonder if maybe CGI artists the world over were just hungry.
Maybe.
They're all just wanting an extra lunch, and they're like, you know what? I'll make one.
Here we go. I'm gonna torture myself with this food I can't eat.
I know. And speaking of which, you're probably hopping back on to torture yourself with some more Pikmin fruit here soon. We've got a review coming up on the channel soon. And a lot more of Pikmin 3 Deluxe content, I'm sure. So stay tuned to Game Explain for a whole lot more on Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Is there anything else we wanted to add before we close out?
I think we've covered it, my friend. I think that is pretty much it.
All right. So, as always, y'all, thank you for watching.
Oh, I take it back.
Oh, we got more.
Yeah, there's one more thing, actually. We didn't talk about the hint system, and you can already see this in the demo yourself, too, but they added a major new ability in that you can bring up a hint at any point in the game, and it'll basically tell you what you need to do, whether it's a part of the environment you need to go explore, or a wall you need to take down, or a boss you're having trouble with. It will not just tell you what to do, it'll point you where to go. It puts an arrow path on the ground and will literally draw the path to exactly where you need to go. I find it almost a little bit too much. Like, once the arrows are there, there's no way to turn them off unless you go turn off the hint system entirely. So I wish they had maybe pulled back a little bit on the help, because I feel like it's going to be way too easy to fall into the pattern of like, hey, I'm a little bit confused, just tell me where to go, right? And that kind of takes away some of the essence of Pikmin, which is like the exploration factor. So I wish they maybe made that just a little bit harder to get access to, even though you can easily ignore it. You don't have to use it. It's nice that it is there. Just a heads up to people, like, if you want the true Pikmin experience, I would avoid using the hint system, unless you're really truly stuck.
Now, does a lot of Nintendo games, before a system like this engages, they ask you, like, hey, we've got some help ready. Do you want to use it? Does Pikmin 3 Deluxe do that, or is it just like, hey, you already turned it on, so here you go? Yeah,
no, there's basically just a perpetual option displayed in the bottom left corner of the screen. Be like, hey, if you need a hint, just press it up on the control pad. I think it's up on the control pad, and it'll bring up the hint if you do that. So yeah, it doesn't really draw attention to itself much otherwise, but it is a constant reminder that those hints are there if you need them. But again, you can turn them off on the menu if you want to.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you. I'd recommend turning them off because I think it kind of runs counter to the spirit of the game. But I am at least glad to know that it's something even once you've opted in, you then have to further ask in a way for a hint. So it's not like if you just sit idle for too long and go grab a sandwich, you're not going to come back and they're going to be like, hey, the boss is that way.
Exactly. Although you did remind me of one other point I wanted to bring up. It relates back to the map. In the previous game, in order to see the full map, you actually had to go explore it yourself. You had to physically walk to an area for it to be reflected on the map. That's no longer the case. The level's shown to you immediately, which I didn't even notice at first, and I'm totally okay with. But I actually found this game a little bit confusing initially, which I realized runs a little bit counter to my tip complaint just now. But I think now having the map, displayed constantly just makes it easier to get into. So that's just another quality of life thing that kind of like just smooths over the experience. And I think so far, again, in my experience, has made it more fun up to this point.
Nice. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I do remember having some instances where I knew there was more to the map and I had a real hard time navigating my way through to figure it out. So this could be helpful. I've really got to download that demo.
Yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely will after this. So, all right. No more false starts.
I think we're done. I think we're finally done.
We're done. All right. So, as always, everyone, we'll do this one more time. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Game Explained for a lot more on Pikmin 3 Deluxe and all other things gaming as well. Ring that notification bell to be the first to know the second our review of Pikmin 3 Deluxe goes up. I'm Steve. I've been joined by André, and we will see you next time.